A few weeks back, someone from our community Discord shared a link to this stunning website packed with some sleek animations. Out of everything on that site, this over effect instantly stood out. At first glance, it might remind you of those common image reveals where your cursor simply unveils a filter or a different image beneath. But if you look closely, this one is on a whole different level. Instead of just revealing an image with a CSS or SVG shape, it uses a dynamic displacement mask. You can see it distorts in real time, creating that jagged, organic ripple that follows your cursor in a really satisfying way. We haven't explored anything like this on the channel before, so I decided to take it on as a challenge. I won't lie, this was a tricky one to pull off, but I managed to recreate a simplified version using Next.js and Three.js with shaders doing all the magic. In this video, I'll show you exactly how to build this over effect for your own hero images, and for those not using frameworks, I've also built a pure vanilla JavaScript version. You can unlock the source code through the Pro membership. The link is in the description below. Please drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Alright, let's dive into the code. To save some time, I've already set up a fresh Next.js project and got it running locally. Let's begin by cleaning up the boilerplate to work with a blank canvas. I'll open up globals.css file and remove all the default styles. Then I'll do the same with page.module.css file, just wiping it clean. Now under the source directory, I'll create a new folder called components. Inside that, I'll add a folder named inversion lens. This is where we'll build our custom component. Since this component needs access to browser-specific features, we'll mark it as a client component by adding useClient directive at the top. It's going to be a simple functional component that accepts two props: source, the path to the image we want to use, and the class name, an optional class name for custom styling. The component returns a div with the class name inversion lens, and if a custom class is passed, it will be added too. Inside this container, we place an image tag with the source set from props. Notice that we also apply display none to this image. That's because it doesn't need to be visible on the page. We'll only use it to create a texture in Three.js later. Now that the structure is ready, let's head over to the home page. I'll clear out all the placeholder markup from the main file since we don't need anything except the image we'll apply our effect on. Then I'll import the inversion lens component we just created and render it inside the home component, passing in the image path via source. Next, I'll drop the image inside the public directory so it's available to load. Let's also add some quick page styles. In global CSS file, I'll use the universal selector to reset margin and padding and set box sizing to border box for consistent sizing. For the inversion lens container, I'll apply position relative, full viewport width and height, and overflow hidden so the image or any canvas effects stay within bounds. Now comes the core of the effect, creating the displacement interaction using shaders. To generate that organic, jagged ripple that follows the cursor, we'll rely on custom GLSL shaders. And I'll be honest, shader coding isn't something I have any experience with. So for this part, I used a bit of help from ChatGPT to build a functional displacement effect that we could feed into Three.js. So let me create a new file called shaders.js where I'll paste and export these two shaders, a vertex shader and a fragment shader. The vertex shader you are seeing is pretty standard for 2D full screen shaders. It simply passes the UV coordinates to the fragment shader and outputs the position on the screen. The fragment shader is where all the magic happens. With this one, we calculate that jagged ripple using Turbulent, which is a layered noise function. This gives us a more organic, chaotic shape rather than a perfect circle. Then, we calculate the distance from the cursor and compare it to a radius, applying a step function to reveal the effect only within the distorted boundary. We also blend between a grayscale inverted version of the image and the original colored image, giving us that trippy reveal effect as the mask follows your mouse. Now that the shaders are in place, let's start working on the animation. Inside the inversion lens component, I'll begin by importing a few essentials. Use effect for running slide effects once the component mounts. Use ref will help us persist references to DOM elements and the WebGL context. We also bring in our vertex shader and fragment shader. And of course, we import everything from Three.js library. Now, before we continue wiring up the animation, we need to create some refs to store and persist key elements across renders. These won't trigger re-renders when updated, which makes them perfect for storing mutable values like renderer instances, uniforms, and mouse data. Let me break this down. Container ref is attached to the outer div and gives us access to the DOM container where our WebGL canvas will live. Renderer ref will hold the WebGL renderer instance. scene ref and camera ref store Three.js scene and camera so we can reuse them across frames. Uniforms ref gives us direct access to the shader uniforms, allowing us to update values like mouse position and time on each frame. IsSetupComplete ref is a boolean we'll use to ensure we don't set up things more than once. This is especially helpful if we are running in a React strict mode environment. Next, I'll define a config object that will help us tune the behavior for our displacement effect. Mask radius defines the base radius of the reveal mask around the corner. Mask speed controls how fast the turbulence moves over time. Lerp factor is used for smoothing the mouse movement so the ripple doesn't snap instantly to the cursor. Radius lerp speed lets us animate the radius more smoothly when the cursor enters or leaves the canvas. Turbulence intensity controls how jagged or smooth the distorted edge of the reveal effect looks. You can tweak these later to customize how aggressive or subtle the effect feels. To manage cursor movement and animation state, I'll create few more refs. Target mouse stores the last mouse position in normalized coordinates. Lerped mouse gives us a smoothed out version of that position using linear interpolation. Target radius helps us animate the mask radius when the user enters or leaves the canvas. Is in view and is mouse inside container track whether the canvas is in the viewport and whether the cursor is hovering over it. Last mouse X and last mouse Y are used to check if the mouse has actually moved between frames. We'll use this to optimize updates and avoid redundant re-renders. Animation frame ID keeps track of the request animation frame ID so we can clean it up properly when the component unmounts. All of this might seem like a lot, but it helps keep the animation precise, responsive and efficient. Now inside a use effect, I am setting up the logic that handles texture loading, scene initialization, and the start of our animation loop. First, I add a safeguard to prevent reinitializing everything multiple times. This checks if the setup is already complete, if the container element exists, and if an image source was provided. Then, I create a Three.js texture loader. This will handle loading the image that we passed into the component. Inside the helper function called loadTexture, I trigger the loader to fetch the image. Once it's loaded, I'll call three main functions in sequence. First, setup scene, which initializes the scene, mesh, material, and camera. Then setup event listeners, which handles mouse movement and interactions. And finally, animate, which starts frame by frame update loop using request animation frame. After everything is successfully initialized, I flag IsSetupComplete ref as true so that this setup doesn't repeat in future. Now to keep things clean, I also return a cleanup function from the use effect. This function cancels any pending animation frames, disposes of the WebGL renderer to free up memory, and removes the canvas from the DOM if it still exists inside the container. This cleanup ensures we don't leak memory or accidentally stack up multiple renderers if the component re-renders or unmounts. Now let's break down what happens inside the setup scene function. This is where we configure everything Three.js needs to render the displacement effect. First, I begin by checking if the container element exists. If it doesn't, we exit early. This just prevents potential runtime errors. Next, I calculate the aspect ratio of the image. This is important because we need the shader to scale the image correctly on different screen sizes. I then tweak a few texture properties for quality. Setting mean filter and mag filter ensures smoother image scaling, and enabling anisotropy sharpens the image when viewed at angles. It's a subtle improvement, but it enhances clarity. After that, I create a new Three.js scene and store it in a ref so we can access it later during animation. Next up is the camera. Since we are building a full screen effect, I am using an orthographic camera instead of a perspective one. This gives us a flat 2D view, which is perfect for shader-driven visuals like this. No perspective, no depth, just a direct view of the plane. Then I define the shader uniforms. These are dynamic values passed into the shader from JavaScript. UTexture is the image we want to apply the effect on. UMouse is the cursor position normalized to screen space. UTime helps us animate turbulence over time. UResolution is the canvas size used for aspect correction. URadius defines how big the ripple mask is. USpeed controls how fast the turbulence animation flows. Image aspect ensures the image retains its proportions. And finally, UTurbulence intensity adjusts how sharp or smooth the distorted mask looks. These values will be updated in real time as the animation runs. After the uniforms are set up, I create a plane geometry that fills the entire screen. This acts as the surface for our shader effect. Then I build the shader material using the vertex shader and fragment shaders we defined earlier and assign the uniforms to it. I'll apply that material to a mesh and add it to the scene. Now it's time to set up the renderer. I'll create a new WebGL renderer with anti-aliasing enabled for smoother visuals and store it in a ref. I set the pixel ratio to match the user's device for crisper rendering, especially useful on high density screens. Then I set the renderer size to match the container dimensions and increase anisotropy once again to boost texture sharpness. Finally, I append the renderer's canvas to the container so it appears on the page. To make the canvas responsive, I'll define a handle resize function. This listens for window resize events, updates the canvas size, and refreshes the shader's resolution uniform to match. Without this, the effect would break or stretch on different screen sizes. I attach this resize listener to the window and return a cleanup function that removes the event listener when needed. That wraps up the full Three.js setup. Now we are ready to connect interactivity with mouse movement and start animating the shader. First, I define a handle mouse move function. This gets triggered whenever the mouse moves anywhere on the page. Inside it, I call another function called update cursor state, passing in the current mouse coordinates. This function updates the internal mouse position and handles logic for whether the cursor is inside the effect area. Next, I define a handle scroll function. Whenever the page is scrolled, it reuses the last known mouse coordinates to update the cursor state. This is useful in cases where the element moves due to scrolling, but the mouse hasn't changed position. I add both of these as global event listeners, mouse move on the document and scroll on the window, so they keep tracking activity even if the user moves quickly across the screen. Now we only want the animation to run when the component is actually visible on the screen. So I use the intersection observer API to detect whether our container is in the viewport. If it goes out of view, like when the user scrolls past it, I set is in view to false and reduce the target radius to 0. This fades out the effect when it's not active, which helps the performance too. I observe the container element and store the observer cleanup function so it disconnects properly later. Finally, I also return a cleanup function from this setup. This removes all event listeners and disconnects the observer when the component unmounts or resets. The update cursor state function is what actually processes the mouse position relative to the component. First, I store the raw mouse X and Y values so we can reuse them during scroll events. Then, I get the bounding box of the container using getBoundingClientRect function. I check whether the mouse position lies inside this box. If it does, I calculate the normalized UV coordinates from the mouse position ranging from 0 to 1 across the width and height of the container. Since WebGL treats the y-axis as the bottom to top, I also invert the y value so the effect renders correctly. When the cursor is inside the container, I update the target mouse values and set the radius to our configured value. If it's outside, I set the target radius to 0 to fade the effect out. This ensures the shader only activates when the cursor is hovering over the canvas. Now that everything is set up, it's time to bring the hover effect to life using a real-time animation loop. This is done inside a function called animate, which will run on every frame using request animation frame. At the start of the function, I add a safety check. If any of the core elements like the uniforms, renderer, scene or camera aren't ready yet, we just request the next animation frame and exit early. This ensures we don't get any errors if the component is still mounting. Once everything is ready, I move on to updating the animation state. The first step is smoothing out the mouse movement. Instead of jumping straight to the cursor's target position, I use linear interpolation, often called lerping, to slowly move the lerp mouse toward the target mouse. This creates a more fluid and natural trailing effect as the mask follows the cursor. Then I copy the updated lerp mouse values into the shader's U-mouse uniform so the shader has the current position to work with. Next, I increment the U-time uniform on each frame. This allows the turbulence in the shader to evolve over time, creating the dynamic distortion ripple. It also animates the mask size by gradually adjusting the U radius value. It eases towards the target radius using another lerp style calculation. This makes the mask appear and disappear smoothly as the cursor enters or exits the canvas area. After all the uniforms are updated, I render the scene by telling the renderer to draw the current frame using our camera and scene. Finally, I call request animation frame again to keep the loop going and repeat this process on the next frame. This is what gives us that seamless, reactive, buttery smooth displacement effect on hover, updated in real time with every frame. So that was it. Hope you found the video helpful. See you in the next one.